Craft matters. In small ways, like how a coffee is brewed. And in not so small ways, like how your money is cared for. Which is why for 160 years, UBS has elevated banking to a craft. Tailoring unique strategies that combine human expertise with the latest technologies. All happening across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs. With you at the heart of it all. UBS. Advice is our craft.
You're listening to The Globalist, first broadcast on the 20th of January 2026 on Monocle Radio. The Globalist, in association with UBS. Live from London, this is The Globalist with me, Emma Nelson. A very warm welcome to today's programme. Coming up, Trump 1 year on. As the daily shocks just keep coming, our senior news editor Chris Chermak is here to bring us the view from Midori House. Chris.
Hello, what a year it has been. We're going to be talking about Trump's 1 year from the inauguration to today and how the approaches to Donald Trump have changed within the country and without.
And we wonder whether they've been working as well. Thank you for that, Chris. We'll also be heading to Juliet Linley, standing by in RHQ in Zurich. Juliet, a very good morning to you. What's on the agenda today?
Well, Emma, I'll be speaking to a foreign correspondent from one of Sweden's major daily newspapers to hear about the importance of reporting in the field. And she's going to be passing through Studio 4 as she heads up to Davos. We'll also check in with our Carlotta Rebello, who is on the ground there up in the mountains. And I'll catch up with a friend of Monocle about Brand Switzerland being on the world stage these days.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Juliet. We'll be checking in with you a little bit later. Plus our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, will be joining everyone around the table at Studio 4 as well. And we pay tribute to Valentino, one of the last great 20th century couturiers who's died aged 93. We'll go through the papers as well and enjoy the latest tech news too. So a busy hour ahead on The Globalist, live from London. Before we begin, a quick look at what else is happening in today's news. The lower house of Australia's Parliament has voted to approve a national gun buyback programme and institute new checks on firearm licence applications. The three top Roman Catholic archbishops in the United States have warned that America's role in confronting evil around the world is under examination. And Japan's Minister for Tourism says a record number of foreign visitors came to the country last year, but the number of Chinese tourists has fallen sharply as a result of a diplomatic spat between the two countries. Stay tuned to Monocle Radio throughout the day for more on these stories. But first, we examine today's top story from both the point of view in Zurich and here in London. There is indeed barely a citizen on earth whose life has in some way escaped the influence of Donald Trump's second term. From Swiss Army knife manufacturers whose products now have to be made partially in the US, to the traders who've seen markets wobble and then regain their footing. It is a year today since Donald Trump took up the presidency of the United States for a second time, and to take stock of what's happening and to look ahead to 3 more years. I'm joined by Tyler Brûlé, our editorial director from Studio 4 in Zurich, and also by a senior news editor, Chris Chermak. Good morning to you both, gentlemen.
Good morning, Emma.
Good morning.
Tyler, 1 year down, 3 to go.
Indeed, and I'm just looking at Le Figaro, the main story, and Emma, just as you were setting this up, talking about, of course, who has not been touched. Well, if you are certainly a wine producer, maybe with a small biodynamic vineyard in somewhere in France, or if you're waking up and you are Mr. Arnaud this morning, Le Figaro is leading, and this is like the big breaking news story in France right now. Donald Trump announces his intention to impose 200% tariffs on French wines and champagnes. Emma, can you imagine what our Chandra Kurt, our wine correspondent, is going to have to say about that? And hopefully someone we can line up a little bit later on the program. But this, speaks to, here we are 1 year on. Who would have thought, of course, coming in, certainly with indeed much fanfare, of course, much trepidation on the side of many others as well. But they would be in a place 365 days on. We were having conversations which are clearly they're not just broadsides. I mean, these are full frontal attacks on a key ally, a key trading partner. Of course, a nation that has counted itself very much as a friend and ally of America, and now you're going to have potentially 200% on your Krug.
Indeed, and it is, and the way that the Le Figaro has talked about it today, I said the axe has fallen once again. It is, Tyler, that element of surprise which has taken everybody by surprise for the last 365 days.
Well, and this is, of course, as we went into this last year, and maybe it was in the week or days running up to the inauguration. I think many of us were reflecting on exactly what happened the first time around under the first administration, which was this dominance across 48 months, 4 years, where the entire news agenda was dominated by whatever Trump woke up and thought that morning, whatever his Secretary of Defense might have had on his mind. And we're in the same place. I mean, if you just have to look, of course, stories, key issues around the world that attempt to bubble up to the surface. It is our job, of course, as a news organization to shine a spotlight, to deploy people to go and tell other stories. But it's very, very difficult whether it's a geopolitical story, it's economic, it's cultural. It is remarkable how much the hands of Washington and indeed the hands of course, President Trump touch everything. And we have this dominance of the news agenda, and it's very difficult for an Argentina, a Papua New Guinea, even a South Korea to get much airtime.
And let's bring in our senior news editor Chris Chermak at this point to talk about this very subject. Chris, the idea that trying to keep up has been one of Newsroom's perpetual sort of challenges from the moment that the starting gun was fired this time last year. But I remember when we were going into this, and someone said to me, right, in term one, you took Donald Trump literally, but you didn't take him seriously. This time around, we have to take him both literally and seriously.
And I think there's a very key reason to that, and kind of jumping off what Tyler was saying there. One of the differences with 2016, I think, is yes, back in the first term, everyone was paying attention to what Donald Trump had to say. But there was also an opposition to Donald Trump that was crystal clear and loud. There was an opposition within his administration to what he was doing, those sort of guardrails that were set by members of his own administration. And there was an opposition without, whether that was a loud Democratic Party or even protests, the Me Too movement, all of these things that sort of came out of Donald Trump's first term. All of that has been relatively lacking this time around, Emma. So Donald Trump, I think, has spent a year testing the limits of what he can do for America abroad, what he can do for conservatives of America within the country. And he's testing where the resistance will come from. Donald Trump respects strength. He admires strength. He almost needs to respect you as an adversary for standing up to him before he backs down. And that is, I think, something we've seen time and time again this year. You look at a couple of examples of, say, China standing up to him, threatening tariffs back at the United States. Trump has backed down and made a deal. Even Canada's an interesting example of that. Mark Carney, loud in his opposition, got him elected. Trump kind of backs down, takes a step back from Canada. If you give him what he wants, he keeps taking all the way to Greenland today.
Tyler, bringing you back in here. I mean, the whole premise for the last year has been everybody has to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But are there areas where things actually have found stability? I mean, for example, you just need to think about when Donald Trump was going to impose strict tariffs worldwide, the markets turned around to him and said, don't you dare do that. And he backed down. And as a result, there have been areas, pockets of stability.
Well, if you only have to look at whether it's the Wall Street Journal, the NZZ, of course, everybody having a look back right now, let's say that the last 12 months told in 17 charts, 5 charts, etc. And of course, there are pockets where we have seen a level of stability, of course, stability, which is, of course, working for the U.S. And I think, as Chris was saying as well, this is certainly an administration. We've seen, of course, in the last 24 hours, the these bizarre exchanges where suddenly everything pants are down, underpants are down. I mean, it's like just throw everything open. And so we've got this correspondence, of course, between Washington and Oslo. We now have correspondence between Paris and Washington, where whether these are WhatsApps, whether these are emails that are just being thrown out completely in the open. And if I go back to, of course, Norway, there's this sense of Donald Trump, feeling more than a little bit irked, and of course roundly blaming Norway, of course not the Nobel Foundation, but Norway, for not awarding him the Peace Prize, and of course we're led to believe this might have something to do with this notion of maybe peace is not a priority. It's a place, as he says, that he would like to get to, but maybe a peaceful world is not top of the agenda for him. So I think this brings back to the point that we have pockets of stability, but those pockets of stability have to ensure that they go back to the 50 states, that they go back to Washington, and not that we necessarily have a calm Pacific or a calm Atlantic.
Chris, you've written about this in today's Monocle Minute, and there's this idea that it's the big question being raised, isn't there? That is there an actual plan here, or is Donald Trump acting on dangerous whims? Because if you were to look at what's happening in the last couple of weeks, you could imagine him checking the globe for natural resources. Oh, look, Venezuela. Oh, look, Greenland. And thinking, I want them.
Well, absolutely. But I think there is a rhyme and reason to that. He is looking for resources. He is looking for things that will make America stronger. But as I said at the outset, I think at the same time, there is a rhyme or reason in that when he faces significant opposition, he takes a step back. And I think that's what you're going to have to watch for when it comes to Greenland, for example. If Europe meets his strength and says that they are going to defend Greenland at all costs and make a point of that, that's the kind of thing that might lead Donald Trump to back down. I mean, even as Tyler was saying there, he's talking now about not necessarily being about peace. He wants to see strength. That's what's going to lead to him backing down. Even in his first term, we saw that with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. If you're loud enough, and ironically, if you escalate, it can lead to a better relationship with Donald Trump down the line once he sees that you're standing up for yourself. And one final comment on that, to talk about the stability side, financial markets, I think, have been a fascinating element of that because they have had ups and downs, but they've also arguably brought that stability because Trump watches, say, the financial markets. If they're going down dramatically, it leads to a course correction from him. So he does want some element of stability, and he's watching certain signals for that stability and how far he can push and what's going to bring him back into the line. Financial markets have been one of those things that have brought him repeatedly back into line.
Monocle senior news editor Chris Chermak in the studio. Thank you. Tyler Brûlé over in Studio 4 in Zurich. He'll be coming back later, but for now, thank you very much indeed, Tyler. And just to let you know, Monocle Radio is in Greenland for the daily this afternoon, the evening, no matter where you're listening. Andrew Muller will be hosting from Nuuk. We'll be crossing to Davos for a live programme for the briefing. Carlotta Rebello is your host for that. And Chris's Monocle Minute is available to read right now on our website. You're listening to The Globalist with me, Emma Nelson. It's time now to head to Studio 4 in Zurich. Juliet Linley, journalist, broadcaster and Vatican analysis, is standing by. A very good morning to you, Juliet. How are things from where you are?
Good morning, Emma. Well, these days here in Zurich, it's very much a key transit hub for CEOs, politicians, journalists. They're all making their way up the mountain to the World Economic Forum. And I'm pleased to say, Emma, that one of them has joined me in the studio this morning. She's a highly respected journalist en route to Davos. She's Gunilla von Hall, foreign correspondent for the Swedish newspaper Svenska Dagbladet. Gunilla, you're passing through Zurich on your way to Davos, and we're so lucky that we've caught you just after you stepped off the train and about to step onto another train. You've covered the World Economic Forum many times. I think you said 6 times over the last years. We're all feeling a bit shaken these days, especially with all the geopolitical turbulence. To you, how different does this year feel?
This is very, very charged. I feel like this is maybe the most important World Economic Forum I've covered. I feel like everyone is on their way up. to this mountain, trying to solve a huge geopolitical crisis that we have today. It's very critical. It is good in a way too, because everyone is on their way up to Davos to actually try to have a dialogue, try to solve this impasse that we are in right now.
Because it is, in fact, important to meet face to face. It is important to bring together the leaders of the political, business worlds, and so on. And as you were saying, this now more than ever, it's important. Relations are really pretty touchy between the US and Europe. How is it looking from Stockholm? How does this new power realignment look? There's so much geopolitical uncertainty. There's so much influx. What are your viewers seeing, and what is the leadership in your country seeing?
Well, there is a big worry and also anger with Trump and the way he's dealing with the world and threatening the world, threatening EU. Our prime minister was very upset yesterday, saying that the US, Trump, you can't blackmail us. I can see today the markets are down 2.5%. Export companies are worried because more tariffs. They already have 15, adding 10%. This is, we're very dependent on the export industry, and the US is an important market still. So companies are worried, people are upset. No one understands why Trump is doing this. We are all in NATO.
There's a lot of antagonism. What is your view on how prepared Europe is? The leadership, how should Brussels respond? How should the leaders respond? What's your point on that?
It's very difficult, and I feel like everyone is waiting right now what to do, because some people say, like Macron has been very tough, there should be punitive action, punitive tariffs, answer with the same message that Trump sends. Others, like Keir Starmer, UK is not in the EU now, but he wants to have more of a dialogue, negotiated solution, as well as Meloni in Italy. So the EU is not really united on how tough we should now be on Trump. A lot of people are saying, be really tough. Now, tariffs stop the US from accessing their military bases, stop buying American weapons. I mean, there's a whole list of things that the EU could do. But there is a fear and a worry, if the EU hits back really hard, what will Trump then do? Will he hit back even harder? And we need the US. We need the US, not least for the war in Ukraine, to stop the war in Ukraine, because we have Russia close to our borders, and we need the US as a guarantor against Russia.
You have Russia very close to your borders, closer than we do here in Switzerland. I'm wondering, you mentioned the anger that Swedes are feeling. If you look at the Swedes and you look at the readers of the Svenska Dagbladet, for instance, what do you think they misunderstand the most? You're a foreign correspondent for them. You're telling them you actually don't just cover Switzerland. You're based in Geneva, but you cover all the hotspots if you want. What do you feel, which are the conflicts that they least seem to get? Or what is it that you would rather they could understand more clearly thanks to the witness that you are bearing through your work and your job?
I think they are sometimes more living in a bubble. I think the media is very dominated by often an Anglo-Saxon view, and they don't get a lot of other views from Asia, from Latin America, from Middle East. And for that reason, it's so important that we go out as foreign correspondents and can bring the voices from these other conflicts and wars and crises back to my readers, because otherwise all they're going to read is Trump, EU, and what's happening in Sweden.
It's paradoxical, if you want, that so many big news organizations have been shutting down their foreign bureaus. I don't know the specifics about the numbers within your company, but in general, now more than ever, surely, your role as a foreign correspondent is so critical.
I really believe so. I think it's a very important moment right now that we don't do more cut-downs, that we don't just rely on ChatGPT and to do summaries in different ways with different search engines. We need to have the correspondents going out there. I see when I've been to North Korea, I've been to Russia, I've been to Ukraine, I've been to Syria, I've been to Colombia. I go out there, I meet people, I go into families, I go in the field, I feel this, I can smell the fire, I can smell the refugee camps, I can see with my own eyes how people are living, and I can have the conversation with real people, with normal people, with average people in these conflicts and wars. And those are very important to bring home. Those are things you don't get if you only have news desks doing summaries about the general news situation from home desks.
So crucial. And coming back to here now, today, we're here. You're heading up to Davos on the next train up. What are your expectations?
Well, expecting, I think, more hoping that there will be some kind of walk back from this very tense situation we are in right now. Today, we'll hear Macron speaking, von der Leyen, and we're going to have tension building up probably. And then Trump comes tomorrow, more tension building up. And then hopefully after meeting over coffees and dinners and drinks, they will walk back from this brinkmanship and we will have a better, calmer world.
Let's hope there'll be a defusing. I don't think you're the only one hoping that as we all head up the mountains. Gunilla von Hall, foreign correspondent for Svenska Dagbladet. Thank you so much for joining us here in Studio 4 in Zurich. Run and catch your train. Back to you in London, Emma.
Thank you, Juliet. We'll be coming back to you a little bit later for a bit of a roundtable from Studio 4 in Zurich. That's Juliet Linley, journalist, broadcaster and Vatican analyst, holding the fort in Zurich. Still to come, though.
I'm Andrew Muller, and I'll have some first impressions from Nuuk as Monocle Radio's team arrives in Greenland for a week of special programmes.
Andrew has headed to Greenland, a nation currently being competed over by the US, but still very much its own place with its own people. Stay tuned. This is The Globalist.
Craft is a matter of perspective, a unique outlook, an obsessive attention to detail. With UBS's Chief Investment Office Houseview, we're focused on identifying the latest investment opportunities and market risks to help you achieve your financial goals, so you get the big picture broken down into thought-provoking insights. Delivered daily and curated by over 200 globally connected, locally active analysts. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Let's continue with today's newspaper review. Joining me is Terry Stiasny, author of Believable Lies, The Misfits Who Fought Churchill's Secret Propaganda War. How are you, Terry? Welcome to the studio.
Very well, thank you.
Good to have you with us. Now, I sort of tweaked a little bit today's newspaper review because we're not going to start with a newspaper. Terry basically ran in just going, look at what Donald Trump has just posted. So I suppose we have to indulge him. It's very, very serious what he's saying.
I think, particularly because given all the meetings that there are likely to be this week and the way that Europe and everywhere else is reacting, the fact that Donald Trump seems to have gone on another early hours Truth Social absolute rant is certainly worth talking about. And his latest post, I've got to describe it to you, is an AI-generated image of the Oval Office with Donald Trump sitting there alongside Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Giorgia Meloni, Ursula von der Leyen, other European leaders. And what he, in this fake image, is showing them is an easel with a map of the Western Hemisphere, where there's a US flag not only on the United States, but also on Canada, Greenland and Venezuela. And Donald Trump is sort of confidently demonstrating this new map of the world to the leaders of Europe. And I think that just shows sort of where his mind is at the moment. And the French press in particular are already picking up on another thing that he has just posted on his stream, which is the private messages from Emmanuel Macron to President Trump, which have been sent over the last couple of days. And I'll just read that out for you because it has been confirmed by the Élysée that this is actually the genuine message that was sent by the French president, where he said in English, "My friend, we are totally in line on Syria. We can do great things on Iran. I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland. Let us try to build great great things. And then Emmanuel Macron goes on to offer to set up a G7 meeting after Davos in Paris on Thursday afternoon, saying he'd invite also the Ukrainians, the Danish, the Syrians, the Russians in the margin. Let's have a dinner together in Paris together on Thursday before you go back to the US, Emmanuel. So I think, this shows what other leaders are trying to do in order to try and deal with Donald Trump. And I think they've got to assume now that anything they say basically is going to end up in the public domain. But also in his most recent remarks, Donald Trump also threatening Emmanuel Macron, saying he's basically going to impose, in addition to the tariffs he's talked about earlier in the week, tariffs of 200% on French wine and champagne. And this is not only to do with Greenland, in Trump's words. This is because Emmanuel Macron doesn't want to join his board of peace.
Our editorial director, Tyler Brillo, was talking about that. I mean, the fact is that, blunt instruments are being used, but I think most of us are absolutely agog that the private messages between the two leaders of some of the most powerful countries in the world are being splashed all over the internet.
Yes, I mean, I think it's fascinating because it is very interesting. Normally, when you get the readouts of calls or messages between world leaders, and I've noticed it recently with the ones that Keir Starmer has been posting, it's very noticeable what they're not saying with Donald Trump. I mean, the most recent call between Starmer and Trump, Starmer said, just like, what he is doing is wrong. And normally those readouts have some kind of, and we agreed to keep in touch, and we emphasised the importance of the special relationship and all these kind of form of words, and it's just clear that absolutely none of that is happening at the moment. And although Macron's giving his best efforts to try and say let's do great things, let's have a dinner, we don't know what Donald Trump's reply to that was. And it just seems to be that he's posting it to try and say, look, they all still want to be nice to me, when you can see that they're just trying anything possible to kind of talk him down after that letter that he sent to the Norwegian Prime Minister as well.
Thank you for that. Right. Let us move to other stories at the moment. We have 3 days of mourning in Spain being held.
Yes, that's right. After the terrible train crash near Cordoba, Spain is going to have 3 official days of mourning. The Prime Minister has already been to visit the scene where nearly at least 40 people have died. There are still some people, unidentified work has been going on overnight to try and identify not only the people that died, but also to try and work out exactly what has happened, because this seems to have been such a severe accident, and very unexpected. The King and Queen of Spain, El País, are reporting, are also going to visit the site. They've changed their plans so that they can travel to the site and then go and visit people there, thank the people who are working on the rescue operation, presumably also likely to visit some of the survivors in hospital. But I think it's just a sign of how big this is for Spain, that the country wants to talk about this and wants to really mark what happened.
Okay, let's move on to an article in The Guardian here in the United Kingdom about the ongoing debate as to whether under-16s should be banned from being able to use social media. All eyes on Australia at the moment.
Yes,
it's just started, and other people are now looking to see if they should pick
Yes,
up
very much. And the British government seems to be really quite following what has happened in Australia. But the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has said in the past he's been open to the idea of a ban on social media for under-16s. But he's been saying he wants to see more evidence from Australia, where they have only just brought in the ban in December before he makes up his mind. But the government's now said that it wants to have a consultation on this. And of course, there's lots of different views. Is it the social media itself that is at fault? Should there be more restrictions on what can actually be posted that young people can see? Talking about the possibility of, there's been the possibility of banning X because of its creation of abuse images, essentially, which the government has so far been reluctant to do. But it does seem to be that Keir Starmer's been under pressure quite a lot from his own MPs wanting the government to go further on this, presumably because of the concerns of a lot of parents who would like to have a backup from the government to say, their children should not be exposed to this.
Finally, let us have a little bit of joy in today's programme. I think we need some. And it's courtesy of an Austrian cow called Veronica.
This is an absolutely joyous story, I have to say. today. And if you've ever seen a Far Side cartoon called Cow Tools, which I will send you later, there is Veronica the cow who lives in a beautiful place in Carinthia called Gaeltal. And she's kept as a pet cow, and her owner noticed that she occasionally played with sticks and used them to scratch her body. So she started playing with pieces of wood, worked out how to scratch herself, is extremely, obviously, a very, very clever cow. And then Viennese scientists have leapt onto this and said, wow, look, there's a cow using an actual tool. And the Dr. Mascaro at the University of Veterinary Medicine, we got everything ready and jumped into the car to visit. So they went to visit Veronica. They filmed her. They did a series of field trials showing that she could pick up a broom and use it to scratch herself in different ways, according to where she felt itching. And they are absolutely delighted because although we've seen chimps, dolphins, other creatures use tools, no one has yet noticed a cow using tools. And this Veronica is a sort of revolution in modern science.
What I love about Veronica is not only is she a delicious sort of creamy coffee-coloured cow, which are the best, but she uses the different ends of the brush depending on where the itch is. So if she's trying to sort her rump out, she uses the bristly end, but the more sensitive areas just get the stick.
Yes, she's brilliant.
We love Veronica. Thank you so much for bringing Veronica into the studio. Well, not literally. Terry Stiasny, author of Believable Lies, The Misfits Who Fought Churchill's Secret Propaganda War. Thank you. You're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio. A quick look now at some of the other stories we're following today. The lower house of Australia's Parliament has voted to approve a national gun buyback programme and institute new checks on firearm licence applications. The move comes a month after the deadly shooting at Bondi Beach. The 3 top Roman Catholic archbishops in the United States have warned America's role in confronting evil around the world is under examination. In a rare joint statement, the cardinal archbishop said events in Venezuela, Ukraine and Greenland raised basic questions about the use of military force. The Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, has declared 3 days of national mourning for the victims of Sunday's high-speed train crash. On a visit to the scene, he promised a transparent investigation into the cause of the disaster. The number confirmed dead has risen to 40. And Japan's Minister for Tourism says a record number of foreign visitors came to the country last year. But the number of Chinese tourists has recently fallen sharply as a result of a diplomatic spat between the two countries. This is The Globalist. Stay tuned. We'll be heading back to Zurich in just a moment. Our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, standing by. But for the last half hour, we've been talking about a year of Donald Trump and the latest unexpected crisis to send swathes of the old world order into a tailspin is his desire to own Greenland. And we have a team standing by in Nuuk. They'll be stationed for the entire week. Among them, Monocle's contributing editor, Andrew Muller. He'll be presenting the Daily for us every single day this week. And he sent us this dispatch.
In a sane world, there would be little reason for the world's news media to pay Nuuk, capital of Greenland, much heed. In this world, it's actually pretty difficult to trudge a few blocks of Nuuk's snowy streets without ending up in the background of the outside broadcasts of half a dozen news networks. Apologies to everyone whose shot we've ruined. We're all here, of course, because Greenland is the present focus of the 51st state fantasies of US President Donald Trump. Though this has been rumbling for a while, the pitch has escalated noticeably in recent weeks. First impressions are that the locals still seem more bemused than alarmed, though this past weekend perhaps half the population of Nuuk turned out to demonstrate that, as the signs on the placards and hoodies had it, Greenland is not for sale. In Nuuk for Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller. Back to you in London.
Thank you, Andrew, and stay tuned to the Daily all this week from Greenland and across Monocle Radio for a series of dispatches from Andrew and our foreign editor, Alexis Self. You're listening to The Globalist. "8:33 a.m. in Zurich, which is where we head back to now. Joining us from Studio 4 is, among others, is Monocle editorial director Tyler Brûlé. Welcome back, Tyler.
Thank you very much, Emma.
We mentioned in the paper review with Terry Stignasny a moment ago the fact that it is now being made public that Emmanuel Macron's private text messages to Donald Trump are now making it all, well, the last time we checked, they've hit the Straits Times, so they've gone all over the world.
Indeed. And not only that, I mean, it is interesting. We were just watching Donald Trump just actually getting off Air Force One over on the U.S. East Coast. But I think one of the other interesting stories, which is actually just breaking now, concerns the Chagos Islands. And this is another complete flip-flop. This, of course, the story goes back to it's a UK dependency. It will be handed over to Mauritius. But there will be about 140-year lease will remain on Diego Garcia. Now, of course, anyone who is sort of a geopolitical watcher, anyone who, of course, is tuned in to any conflicts in the Gulf will know that Diego Garcia is an incredibly important staging base. It is a very large arms depot administered by the UK, but it is an incredibly important base for the U.S. military. So, yes, both the Secretary of State, Mr. Rubio, Donald Trump, were very happy when this happened. They said this was a very sort of clever deal. And it just sort of brings to the fore that islands are very much in vogue in terms of, being part of the acquisition trail for Donald Trump. So this is something which, of course, has just erupted right now. And he talks about just the stupidity of the deal suddenly. So maybe along the way, someone perhaps wrote that statement for him that he was very happy about it. But here we see again, this is and he talks. It's quite candid, his attack against Keir Starmer and the British government, the stupidity of why they, of course, have gone ahead with this, and it's very much in line with the Greenland story. And listen, we're talking about a very small atoll right now. The U.S. already occupies it, so it would not surprise me if we see a call sometime by the end of today that Donald Trump wants to, of course, make this a U.S. territory. So just a number of things that, of course, we're following, which again, we talk about sort of busy news days all the time, but this is a very sort of already busy news hour.
Yes, we're rolling with the punches on the programme today. And we have the quote from Trump is, shockingly, our brilliant NATO ally, the UK, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia for no reason whatsoever. That last section in capitals. Tones, it's getting a bit pointy, isn't it? The tone coming from different leaders. Thierry Stignasny mentioned the fact that, Keir Starmer, talking about Greenland, publicly said Trump wanting Greenland is plain wrong. It's almost as if the niceties are falling away. I mean, the Macron texts are nice, but they are direct, and one wonders whether the gentle words which usually keep the world quite smooth and quite calm might just be falling away slightly.
Well, I think there's a whole documentary series that we could develop or certainly put into production, Emma, about this, because if you look back, rewind over the last week, I would say the last 10 days, and doesn't just concern, of course, global affairs. It also concerns domestic affairs in the United States as well. The language that we saw coming out of Minneapolis, Minnesota in general, the tone, the profanities from the mayor, likewise from many other people around, Trump giving people the finger going through a factory. There is this also just this erosion. I think this really is a story. What happened to civil conduct? What happened? We talk about niceties, but also being pleasant. And I think that this opens up a whole new world. It's not just a diplomacy question, but, and we were commenting on this recently as well. What does this mean for a next generation of negotiators, a next generation of business owners? Is this how you conduct yourself across the table? We already know that it's very, very difficult for families to come together without someone storming out because I don't want to listen to your point of view. Well, what does that mean for business? What does that mean for forwarding negotiations? That idea of compromise, and we sort of see that this idea of just sort of storming for the door, or I'm going to take over your factory, whatever it may be. It opens up, and what this is going to mean, I think, from sort of a generational perspective as well, because I think a lot of business leaders, doesn't matter whether you're sitting in the United States or the Philippines, this is going to pass as acceptable behavior when it comes to conducting yourself in not just a diplomatic environment, but in a business environment.
And indeed, I mean, just briefly touching on the tone that those who are reporting it must adopt as well. I mean, we have had a breathless, 38 minutes of live radio, just keeping up with what is going on in the last, 45 minutes. But that idea that the considered conversation is something which is going to have to fight harder to retain its place.
Absolutely, and that it was interesting. I think going back to our interview a little bit earlier, where Juliet Lindley was talking to the correspondent from Svenska Dagbladet, this idea of being witness, the notion that we have to send out journalists, that we have to make sure that there are budgets to have people on the ground, to deploy people at a moment's notice, but also, as you're saying, then to have a conversation to be able to, of course, analyze these topics as well, and that it can't just be this steady stream of just fast response to, of course, various tweets or various blasts of 70 to 100 words that come out on various social media platforms.
Talking of cool and considered words, let's bring in Juliet Lindley, standing next to you in Studio 4. Welcome back, Juliet.
Thank you, Emma. Here I am.
I have to just paint a little bit of a picture because, and I think we'll come to the story in a moment, or maybe we're going to do it now. Juliet is a vision in red, not head to toe, but she has a very jaunty jacket on in red, and it's out of respect and homage to Valentino, of course, the designer who died at age 93 yesterday in Rome, and Juliet, you're looking very fetching, and I think again very respectful to show up for radio. We're not even doing a TV morning show, that you've done this in honor for Valentino Garavani.
Rosso Valentino, he's going to be lying in state from tomorrow and on Thursday as well in Palazzo Mignanelli. Palazzo Mignanelli, as you might remember, is right below the Spanish Steps, which is where we actually used to live before moving to Zurich 7 years ago. And this is a great moment. I mean, he's 93. He was 93. He had a very long run, a good run. He also had a chalet in Stad, which I think perhaps you might have popped into.
I've never popped into his in Stad, no, but I did have the good fortune, sort of maybe back in the 90s, mid 90s into the early 2000s, to spend time to be in sort of the slipstream of Valentino at dinners and various events, and we were saying yesterday, people talked about sort of the death of Giorgio Armani as sort of being the end of an era, but I actually think Valentino was much more in the world of a Karl Lagerfeld. I mean, of course, Armani had a plane and had a great yacht as well, but it was Armani. It was very pared back, and of course Valentino was very much the opposite. 5+ pugs sitting on a sofa in the back of a private plane, and the coiffure and everything that went with it. So to me, this really sort of marks, I think, the very sort of clear end of a very specific era in fashion. Very much the end of an era, as Natalie very nicely put it. He combined Roman elegance with just the right amount of excess. And the country is in mourning. Meloni said he was the undisputed master of style and elegance. Prepare for a lot of big names to be at the funeral in the Basilica di Santa Maria degli Angeli dei Martiri on, I think it's on Friday, the 23rd, in Rome, yeah. Right? And I mean, he dressed everyone from Julia Roberts to Gwyneth Paltrow, from Jackie Onassis to I think Melania Trump too. To Melania Trump as well, absolutely. To myself wearing his Valentino blazer, looking very nice at the table. But I am joined here at the table by the wonderfully not dressed in red, Marcus Schögl. Welcome, Marcus. You're the Associate Professor at St. Gallen University, the Institute for Marketing. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you.
So good to have you. And we're also joined on the line by Carlotta Rebello, Monocle's executive producer, and she is up in the mountains in Davos. Good morning, Carlotta.
Good morning, Juliet. I'm right in the middle of the promenade, where I can tell you that the south entrance to the Congress Center, there's a line already around the block to try to get in. And the first opening speech is only at 10:30 a.m., so people are getting in early today.
And what are we looking forward to today? You were at the USA House, or you are still nearby the USA House. What is it looking like on the ground with so much news coming out of Trump world?
Oh, my God. The USA House, I thought it was quite a poignant start today. It's on the other side of the promenade. I'm no longer nearby, but I started my day quite early at 7 a.m. for a faith and leadership conversation. Now, the USA House has taken the sanctuary, which is the church along the promenade, and I was just so curious how faith has become one of the key points that they're bringing into Davos this year as they mark 250 years of American independence. Now, we had a few American business leaders talking about how faith made them be better entrepreneurs and better leaders. But actually, for me, one of the two most interesting people on that session were the Prime Minister of Kosovo, who was talking about, being a political refugee and a political prisoner, and how faith helped him guide through decisions. And then our good friend Benedikt Franke from the Munich Security Conference, who was talking not just as that role that he has, but also as a member of the German army, as a private citizen, and actually how we are in a world where often we see conflict driven by differences in faith, and how at Munich Security Conference he's been trying to have these sort of conversations for a while. So it was quite a busy morning, and I thought at 7 a.m. it wouldn't be that busy. It was packed. Some people were left outside of the church. I don't know if that's very in line with being, open to all, but that did happen.
And what else can we expect for the rest of the morning?
Yes, so today it is the official opening speech. So we are starting with the CEO and interim co-chairs of WEF, basically opening proceedings. And then a bit later, we are expecting some speeches from Ursula von der Leyen, from Mark Carney, and also from Emmanuel Macron. So it is a big day. It really feels, if yesterday already felt busy, today, just by looking at the promenade, both entrances full of people. I'm right now looking and trying to dodge some robot delivery dog from delivery company DHL. It's everything's happening here.
Okay, well, keep the faith there, Carlotta. Keep the faith. And speaking of faith and leadership, I'd like to bring in Marcus here. So could you say that faith perhaps is now a part of Brand USA all of a sudden?
Oops. I hope so, that they try to improve that brand, besides all the misleading notions that we get from the president. But I think that brand is challenged in the last months, and it's getting challenged day by day. And I'm not quite sure if the brand is going to survive that well to be as differentiated and as popular and as relevant as in the last years.
Okay, so if you were asked to rebrand Brand USA right now, what would be the first suggestions that you would put to Washington?
Oh, Jesus. There would be a simple thing, but that would be a revolution. Looking for a new chief executive, maybe. That would be the easy one. I think that the problem with brands is always their perception, and perception makes reality. And I think they're depending so strongly, even those nation brands are so heavy dependently on the actions that are taken today, and they ruin reputation. Every day you do something against your brand reputation, and it's hard to build up again. So I think there's no short-term solution to this. This is going to be a year-long effort to come back to the point where the United States once were.
If I can jump in, Juliet, if that's okay. I think also when we talk about brands, Marcus, I think there's also that idea that you always have a brand audit. And I think you only had to see yesterday a sporting match in the UK, someone standing up to sing the national anthem for the United States, and just the arena erupting and people booing suddenly. Yeah. And to see this again, let's call it, maybe it's not world stage, but it is on the stage. And of course we know, the emotional impact of any national anthem, but suddenly that you have a key ally, everyone is booing. This would be part of, I think, sort of a national audit saying, okay, what are your global constituents, and meaning your customers, because we're not just talking about Americans, people who have to trade, people who have to interact with the United States. How are they feeling? They're booing at a leisure match.
And I think what you said before about the tone in business, I think this is something that is really changing. And I don't know if it's really for the good of the economy and for the brand of the United States, especially because when you look at it, they've got such a global footprint in any kind of activity, be it sports, be it entertainment, and everywhere. And I'm not quite sure if this is the right way that the brand should be going. And I'm not quite sure. The problem is you can't control it. If you're having a corporate brand, you've got much, much more under control. If you're a nation's brand, you're depending so heavily on the culture that the society is representing and how they are behaving. And as you say, I don't feel comfortable with the idea that the American brand is going to bounce back and be, as for me, coming from Berlin, to say this again, the savior of the world, the savior of my city, amongst two others. But it's really something, it's lacking that confidence of understanding, and brands relate to trust. And I don't know where the trust is going in that direction.
So I'm going to bring it back to Switzerland and Brand Switzerland. And some are wondering whether Brand Switzerland's image has been dented by what happened in Crans-Montana. I know that a lot of the Italian press were very much almost schadenfreude. You see, you perfect Swiss, this can even happen there. If it were in Italy, you'd be laughing at us, but actually look at what happened there. Has brand Switzerland been actually dented, in your view? And what about brand Switzerland this week in Davos? How is that going to be shining on the world stage?
Well, first thing that I need to say, there's no other exceptional brand and nation brands like Switzerland. It's number one everywhere. So they are in a position of such a strength that I think that this brand got maybe more than a hit from Tramontana, because it hits on reliability, it hits on transparency. But I would not bring the brand in so fast, because I think the problems that Switzerland has with Tramontana are much, much more important than just looking at the brand. If I look at it from a long term, I think this is one incident that is heavily relating to the Swiss mentality and the culture. And I think it's going to change a lot in the understanding how Swiss see themselves. So it will be reflected somewhat somewhere around the brand from my point of view. And I think, of course, it got the brand a hit, not a little one. But I don't see the brand is really harmed. When you look at Davos is a platform where Switzerland can shine in neutrality, can shine in dialogue, and bring forward what Switzerland is really all about. But again, all these things are not deliberately related to the brand of Switzerland. It comes as it goes. The actions are the most important part.
Tyler?
I think also because we're talking about such a contained nation as well, 9 million people, and so this it sort of I would say sort of erupts in a much bigger way, Juliet. But listen, this is of course we're talking about lives lost in Tramontana and a series of very high profile failures. But we've had, we have to also look back. Switzerland has had significant crises at a global level. We think about, we had the crash of the Swissair MD-11 off the coast of Nova Scotia. Of course, we've had not just one, we've had several banking crises and bank brands collapsing. We had then the grounding of Swissair, and I think every time we look back and we can go and look at the headlines in the Tages Anzeiger, Le Temps, we can look at the NZZ, and these were all big moments of soul searching. Is the national brand damaged? So, but I think also every time the nation has learned from it as well. And this is, as you said, these rankings, whether it's innovation, whether it's quality of life, whether it's the best cities to live in, Switzerland is always on top. And there is this mindset as well. They want to be there. So this idea of always, how do we sharpen, how do we improve? Of course, not to capitalize on tragedy, but I think this becomes a component of it.
I think the most important thing that I would say about the brand, it's about the response that you have to a crisis. And the response needs to be done in a certain way that you really see that you're taking care of things. And I think that is happening right now. If they clean up the mess that they have in the valley right now with the general prosecutors and all that stuff, that might be something that is hitting back then on Switzerland of being the one that is trying to do everything to do it right again. And I think this is the most important point, that you really try to move forward in a positive and in a citizenship-like thinking. And that might be more important than, just looking at the crisis.
So much more to cover. We'll be looking at brand Switzerland in the next few days on display in Davos. We've got Carlotta Rebello. Thank you for joining us from Davos. Tyler Brulé here in the studio in Zurich, studio number 4. Thank you so much. And Markus Schögl also here with me in Zurich. And I'm going to take it back to you, Emma, in London.
Thank you very much indeed, Juliet. Looking forward to hearing the rest of the output from Zurich this week. You're listening to The Globalist.
IQ, EQ, and AI. 3 components key to the craft of innovation at UBS. Because to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving age, you need a partner with decades of experience, endless passion for the work, and a finger on the pulse of leading technologies, bridging human expertise with artificial intelligence, all to elevate you. UBS. Banking is our craft.
7:53 here in London. We have a few minutes to squeeze in some tech news. I am delighted to say, joining me in the studio, Monocle's technology correspondent David Phelan. Good to see you. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. Now, normally you bring things in. You've brought some things in, but the one thing that I was expecting you to bring in, which is a big knife, probably for very good reasons, is not in Studio One at the moment. We normally do things that make you hear things better, see things better, tech, the sort of like the more kind of like conceptual technology world, you're helping us to chop our carrots better. What's happened?
That's right. CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, mostly about TVs, sometimes about phones, also about domestic appliances, and in this case, from a brand called Seattle Ultrasonics, the C200 chef's knife. It's a chef's knife with an 8-inch blade, fairly heavy handle, but hidden under the handle is a button. Press that and it vibrates. 30,000 times a second, very tiny vibration, less than the width of a grain of salt, so you can't feel it at all, but it's enough that when you cut, it just goes through things that bit easier. It doesn't make everything super simple, but it really helps. And if you're baguette was one of the examples they showed us, and that
I don't bother with cutlery at that point. It's a rush. But carry on.
It
sorry.
goes through much more quickly. So it's an example of how you can take technology to a very ordinary thing and add it and make it better.
Interesting point. Making technology help an ordinary thing. I mean, when I was listening to what you were saying, my brain was thinking, okay, when might I need to use this? Why do I need? Ordinarily, heavy knives are not a brilliant thing. They have to be perfectly balanced. But why do I need this clearly very, very clever thing?
Yes, it's a good question because, a superb Japanese chef's knife is probably going to cost the same. It's hundreds of dollars for this knife and might cut as well. But there is something quite satisfying about watching how well it cuts.
And the very mundane person is saying, can you put it in the dishwasher?
No, I don't think you can because
in which
it's got
case
a battery inside
it's
it.
not coming into the Nelson's household. Right, okay. Now, normally you bring in smart glasses. No smart glasses today, but stories about them.
Yes. Even Realities, which has been going for a little while now, they're onto the G2. That's their second generation, obviously. These just look like ordinary glasses. You can't see anything. But then when you tip your head up slightly, a screen appears. It's entirely green. So it's green lines, green words, green maps even, that seem to float in front of your eyes. No one on the outside can see them. But they work very well, and they're effective because they have cool features like teleprompter, so that if you're delivering a speech and you haven't bothered to learn your lines, they will appear just floating in front of you and you can read them. And now they're adding new AI details so that you can have a conversation and information will pop up. We're still not where I want them to be, where as you're walking down a corridor, it says your colleague's name, whom you've entirely forgotten, appears in your name. But maybe that will come with facial recognition. But these don't have cameras in, so that's not possible.
Imagine if it got it wrong.
Yes.
Finally, there's always a piece of show and tell. You brought us 2 pieces of show and tell.
Yes, well, maybe 3. Lucrin is a very nice Swiss brand that makes beautiful cases for every colour of leather, every kind of leather, calf's leather, even ostrich leather, for phones and AirPods cases. And then there's a very nice brand called Arc. This is the Arc Pulse. If you want to hold your phone...
I'm taking David's phone.
And you want it to feel like a phone, but you still want it to be protected. So this is a piece of aerospace-grade aluminium that clips onto the top and to the bottom of the iPhone. And it means that the phone is protected, but nonetheless you get to feel it. And they've now... their CES development, and I couldn't bring this, I'm sorry, it cost £1,400, the Arc Pulse Titanium Opal Damascus, which is...
That's a name, isn't it?
Well, it is. Well, it's made of titanium. You can get the one I've just shown you in titanium as well, and it's forged in a complicated way. And finally, AirPods Pro. If you thought that you don't want to drop your AirPods Pro case, there's a little thing that clips onto the top and the bottom, comes in. That's a sort of matte orange one. You can also get it in shiny silver and other colours, and it just means that you're not worried when you chuck it about that it's going to stay safe.
Brilliant. Another thing for us to lose. David Phelan, thank you so much for coming into the studio and bringing us your things. That was David Phelan, Monocle's technology correspondent. And that's all the time we have for today's programme. The warmest of thanks to all my guests and to the panellists and to our producers, Chris Chermack, Laura Kramer and Tom Webb. Our researcher was Annalise Maynard and our studio manager was Steph Chungu. After the headlines, more music on the way. The briefing's live at midday with Carlotta Rebello hosting from Davos. The Monocle Daily Daily is live from the Greenlandic capital Nuuk with Andrew Muller at 1800 London time, 1600 if you're listening in Nuuk. And The Globalist is back from here in London at the same time tomorrow. Hope you can join me for that if you can. But for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thank you very much for listening.
With UBS, you have a truly global partner, incorporating new technologies, innovative approaches, and unexpected opportunities, leading you to insights that help answer the questions that matter, delivered with passion, care, and unmatched expertise. Because it's about rising with the dawn each day, knowing that we can do even better. That's what banking is to us. Not just work, but a craft. UBS. Advice is our craft.